Welcome back to our second video in the series, looking at a closer look at the cohort definitions in Atlas, looking at concept set queries and group logic. In this video, we're going to look at queries in cohort get definitions. Queries provide the mechanism to locate observational events in the CDM. The word query may mean different things to different people, but we're going to use the query to mean this mechanism that queries events from the CDM. Queries find observational data in any of the date-driven domains listed here on the left. Most of the domains have common criteria attributes like start date, agent event, etc., while some have specialized attributes specific to a domain of information, drugs, measurements, etc. Some criteria can reference information from the standard health system tables, which are location, care site, and provider. Queries utilize domain criteria objects for querying the CDM domain tables with timestamps. Domain criteria object contains the attribute to column filters used to identify records. There are too many attributes to describe in detail here, but most of the attributes are easily deciphered from the description in the UI. For example, the condition start date refers to the condition occurrences condition start date column. However, other criteria attributes are not as obvious, so details will be provided here. So we'll start with the concept ID and source concept ID columns. With very few exceptions, namely the observation period, all the CDM domain tables contain fields for the standard concept and source concept of the information contained in the record. Most queries will specify a concept set for the standard concept field. For example, condition occurrence uses SNOMED for standard concepts stored in the condition concept ID. However, source concepts could be from ICD-9, ICD-10, or READ, and those are stored in the source concept ID field. Queries allow both the domain concept ID and domain source concept ID to be specified in the same criteria, requiring that both the standard concept and source concepts are found within their specified concept sets. If both are specified, then both must result in a positive match for the selected concept set in order for the record to be found. So here's an example of a query from the Atlas UI showing a query for a condition domain where the condition occurrence is of standard concepts and the condition source concept is non-standard concepts. So we say here that this will require the condition concept ID found in standard concepts concept set and the condition source concept in the non-standard concepts concept set. If an or between the standard and source concept is desired, then we'd use a group. A group means that you'll specify two different queries, and in the first query, you'll look for the condition occurrence in standard concepts, and in the second query, you'll use a condition source concept is found in the non-standard concepts. Another attribute of queries is when we have the first time in history versus the earliest event that we discussed in the prior videos. The main difference between first time in history and earliest event is first is determined before any continuous observation is applied. Earliest yields the first event after continuous observation is satisfied. So we have two figures of two patient histories in this diagram. When we specify the first time in history, along with 365 days of prior continuous observation, all the events in figure 1 fail. The reason for that is that when we use first time in history, we're only going to use, after numbering all the events that we found, we're only going to use record number 1. In the case of the second figure, the first record is the record that occurs after the 365 days of continuous observation. And so that record will be used in cohort entry. Alternatively, if the cohort design specified 365 days of continuous observation before index and the earliest event person was specified, both figures would yield a single record. And that is because we are no longer selecting the first. We are finding all the records that for the concept set, and then of those concept sets that have the continuous observation, we return the earliest record per person. In this case, it will be the third record in history, but the earliest record that is after the 365 days of continuous observation. So unlike first time in history, Earliest event per person allows multiple events to be considered, but excludes any event after the earliest event that satisfies the continuous observation requirement. The next unique query in Atlas is the observation period query. Observation period queries provide the ability to specify a user-defined start date and end date that will be used as the index event dates and subsequently define the cohort entry and cohort exit dates. So in this example, we have an observation period query using specified periods starting January 1st, 2018 and December 31st, 2018. This will yield an index event that starts on those two dates. Only the people that have continuous observation through January 1st, 2018 and December 31st, 2018 will be selected. In order to have the cohort exit on the end date, we will use the fixed offset cohort exit. So when we selected this query, we are returning records where this is going to be the start date and end date for each record for all the people. The fixed offset is required because if without it, the exit date of the cohort will be the end of their observation period. So we want to use the end date plus 0 days as the cohort exit date if we want all of our cohort dates to be January 1st and December 31st. Alternatively, if the requirement is to allow anyone who is active in the database on January 1st, 2018 to be included in the cohort, and we have those people persist in the cohort for up to 365 days, the following entry criteria can be specified. So the difference between this one and the prior one is that now we're using the same date of January 1st, 2018 as the start and the end for the event date. A person will only need to be in the data for a single day, January 1st, 2018, in order to be included in this cohort. To specify that person should appear in the cohort for up to 365 days, we'll use a fixed duration relative to the event. We're going to add 365 days to the start date. With an offset of 365 days after the start date, a person will appear up to 365 days or the end of observation, whichever comes first. So not everyone in this cohort will have the same number of days in their cohort eras, unlike the previous example where we required the full year and we specify that the cohort start and end date are going to be January 1st and December 31st. So in conclusion, queries are used to locate records in the CDM domain tables. Records can be located via standard concepts and source concepts. For the first time in history, an earliest event are used to limit the cohort entry events to a single event per person, but have different functionality related to continuous observation. Observation period queries can be used to specify a custom start and end date for the cohort entry event.